First question is just on your basic position. The second is going to be on operations. And the third on your leadership generally in the past. And, of course, all of the pro-life issue, clearly.
Absolutely.
So a lot of us have come to the pro-life place through a circuitous route. I used to be an advocate, a pro-choice advocate. And now, because I became convinced that it was the killing of a human being, I became quite the opposite. So it had a consequence in my life. A lot of us have come through different places, you know. Mine is kind of a immediate one. The first question that I have for you is really about your own position, how you feel about it, how you articulate it, why you have arrived at the pro-life position, how that has been shaped, and your experience in actually promoting that view.
Well, first, Marjorie and Frank, thank you very much. I know this is New Year's Eve day, so I appreciate you taking the time. And as you noted earlier, I've been visiting my mom for the holidays and doing a little bit of traveling for this race, which has been very, very interesting. The most interesting thing for me is that I have always been the campaign manager, the organizer, so this is a little different for me being the actual candidate. I've had a little bit to learn that I can't be the horse and the jockey, so it's taken me a little bit of time. And really for the last 30 years, I have worked to elect Republicans from the state, local, federal, and national level. So no one has really ever asked me what my positions were on any issue. And I think that that's been the most interesting thing because I've never even thought about it. I've worked for so many candidates over the years. But I am, in fact, pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception and goes through natural death. And I have to say that that has been something that I have believed since the beginning of Maria. And I say that because of my faith and because of my family. I was raised in a very, very, very ethnic Italian household, very Catholic. And quite honestly, I have only attended Catholic schools all of my life, from kindergarten through college. As a matter of fact, the first 8 years of my life, I spent more time in church than in the playground because we went to church every day. And I was very fortunate because I was not only raised by very, very loving parents, but I was raised by the Sisters of St. Joseph and our diocesan priests, who I'm still very, very close to. 3 of my best friends in college became priests. As some of my friends have said, no wonder you're not married. You drive them to the priesthood. But my friends
don't go there. We've all got one.
And one of them I'm very proud of in Buffalo, who's just celebrated his 25th Jubilee, which is really remarkable. I don't really feel that old, but it is really remarkable. So for me, it is something that I have always grown up with, and my faith and my family and my friends are very, very, very important to me. But that's how I've been raised. And again, whether it's been through my schooling, my friends, my family, that's just the way I have been raised over the last 50-some years.
Well, that's a beautiful story. It's one that I have not had the benefit of sharing. I had to have it clobbered over my head. So you had a great blessing. The experience angle, I know I've tracked your career and admired it over the years. What are the opportunities you have had, and what have you done with that conviction in terms of being able to press it forward?
You know, as I said, most of the last 30 years, I've really I've worked at the Republican National Committee, the National Republican Congressional Committee, or worked outside it with specific candidates. Congressman Bill Paxton, who was a high school friend of mine. He went to the all-boys Catholic school. I went to the all-girls Catholic school, and we ran races together, all of which, I might add, in our youth we lost. Thank God, as we matured, we were able to elect Bill to Congress. But for me, you know, what I have done over the years is really, in my career, is build coalitions and built very, very strong coalitions that have elected very conservative Republican candidates on all levels. And I have continued to do that for the last 30 years, particularly my days with Bill Paxton, starting out when I ran his race for Congress, which we won. We worked very closely with the National Right to Life and the New York Right to Life organizations. We worked very closely in ways at the Republican National Committee and at the NRCC that I believe we've maybe gotten away from a little bit, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running for chairman. We need to continue to build strong, conservative, socially conservative, fiscally conservative, national defense conservative coalitions. Mm-hmm. And I think you might note from my campaign, I put out about 4 position papers, Path to Victory, in 2012. One of the things that we've called for is, as of April of 2011, we would ask all of the 50 states and the territories to submit a plan for Victory 2011-2012. And we're looking at this as an 18-month plan so that we can get ready for not only the 2011 races, but also ready for the 2013. And one of the key components of those state victory plans would be a strong coalition plan. And that would involve, obviously, the work that we have done and continue to do over the years with the National Right to Life, with the Eagle Forum. I've worked in the past with the Family Research Council and various other groups. They would have to be key components of this plan. And the reason I say that is because we know that we can win election with our conservative voters. We elect conservative Republicans. We have a pro-life speaker, a pro-life president, which I hope to do in 2012, and a pro-life U.S. Senate, as well as local races that will be of importance. The last thing I think that is something that we've not done as much of, and it was a very successful program in 2000. And you'll also note, I have not talked a lot about this because this is tactical, but in 2000, I worked very closely with Catholic Outreach, thanks to Jim Nicholson and Deel Hudson, who were just lifesavers. We established probably a historic Catholic outreach program in 2000. That program was well-funded, had resources that were necessary to go out and register Republicans, Catholics as Republicans, because they believe in our platform, they believe what we believe. We were able to identify Catholics. We were able to get, again, not only Catholics, but conservatives out to vote, which is really our goal, to motivate folks to vote. And there's nothing better than movement conservatives, social conservatives that will come out and vote for our candidates once we educate them on what our candidates stand for. So that's been a big part of what I have done over the last 30 years.
You know, in fact, you're answering that question in such a complete way. It means that the second question is mostly answered, but you may want to add, and that is looking at the pro-life issue specifically moving forward. There are changes that I believe that you have just illuminated that you may see are necessary. Changes from the past couple of years. So would you, because no one better than you understands the detail of the operations and the necessity for turning out pro-life vote, are there specific changes that you would make moving forward, moving into this next crucial election?
You know, Marjorie, as I said, I think for me, not knowing what's been done over the last 2 years, maybe just that we need to do more. I think, again, it's going back to what I know best, and that's organizing, organizing, organizing. And you have to have a plan. And that plan can't be established 2 weeks or 2 months before an election. These are relationships with organizations that have been going on for decades. These are relationships with state parties that really understand the importance. And if they don't, we can provide the expertise. So for me, I think looking ahead, very, very importantly, is the victory plans, which include, as I stated earlier, strong social, conservative coalition plans. It's very specific with goals. Secondly, I would look at using technology much better, where we're able to store all of this important information that we have, getting that to the state parties on the state and local level to be able to use that. I know that we do a little bit more of that with organizations, but I think that there's more that we can do. Third, having and continuing the open door policy, whether it's the weekly meetings that I had with the Eagle Forum back in 93 and 94, or the conference calls that we had with the Christian Coalition, being able to work with organizations on a day-to-day basis.
Uh-huh.
Also, you can't leave out the state organizations. It's great to work with the national organizations, but many times it's the state organizations
Right.
that really need the help, the organization, and the resources.
We certainly found, and the resources is key, and then I'll go on to the last because I'm dominating more than I should have. But the resources...
It always happens, Frank.
Because who wants to go on to Frank? I mean, come on. The finding of the message and the issue in the healthcare debate that was crucial, the one area of bipartisan consensus was to keep abortion out of healthcare. I mean, in the end, there was a lot of other consensus, but that in the end became a trigger issue. And the ability to put RNC resources behind lobbying in those key districts, in my view, would have been really helpful, would have been really important. And it would have also helped build the mandate that led to what I think SBA did with other organizations very well, which is to actually make change in those districts when the guys went wrong or the girls went wrong, whatever. So I agree with you, working day to day so that we come to a consensus about the tactical place to put those. It is the resources that you said that is that some kind it can be a game changer. Either it does or doesn't happen for the movement. So.
Well, I can give you state by state, which I won't bore you. I can also tell you campaign by campaign. But my experience has been where you have a hand-in-glove relationship, that is where you're most successful. Was successful in electing Bill Paxton, one of the most pro-life members of Congress, one of the most pro-life members in the New York delegation. And I think that it goes on throughout our victories with George W. Bush and his reelection. So I think, again, you could cite that over and over again for successful campaigns.
Okay. So thank you. And the last part, and then we'll move on to Frank, is a question that we've asked of every other potential chairman, and it's about where your leadership has been.
Absolutely.
And so and there's been some discussion about the fact that you were involved in Wish List and as a leader there, and I just want to ask you to give your perspective on why you did and how you feel about it now.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me thank you. I appreciate the question because I really do want to be able to answer that question, and I think we've done it in a variety of different ways, but it's always better face to face. I'm going to give you a little bit of history, if that's okay, and I'll do it quickly. In 1993, I had the privilege and the honor of being appointed by Bill Paxton, the executive director of the National Republican Congressional Committee. It was an honor because 15 years ago, I had been an intern at that very committee. So for me, so I thought, and Bill thought we had hit the jackpot. That wasn't quite the case. We got there. It's probably somewhat of a similar situation that the RNC is in right now, deeply in debt. As a matter of fact, the NRCC in 93, we actually talked about bankruptcy, which is unheard of. But we were in pretty rough shape. And we had just lost the White House. So we lost George H.W. Bush. We lost the Senate. And nobody ever believed that the House would be Republican. I have to admit sometimes that I believed in my lifetime we weren't going to have a Republican U.S. House of Representatives. That being said, there weren't a lot of people who gave money to the NRCC. As a matter of fact, there were few. We were able to count the envelopes ourselves of the cash that was coming in. And many of the members involved or tangentially involved with WISH were very, very generous to the NRCC. They helped raise money. They gave us money. And they never asked how that money was going to be used or what candidates were going to get that money. And because of their efforts, their financial resources, they helped us elect a Republican conservative Congress. For the first time in 42 years, we elected a Republican majority. We also elected a pro-life speaker. In 1997, they asked me to help them. I told them that I was, in fact, as they knew, pro-life. They understood that. And they asked me to help them with women candidates. I did that for 1 year. My involvement with WISH was pure and simple, was to use WISH as a vehicle against Emily's list to elect Republican women. After a year, it became clear to me that unlike the 80s and 90s, we had a lot of pro-life women that were now running. And we needed to get more women to run. And I started, co-founded with several other friends, ViewPAC, which was a PAC that allowed us to give to pro-life women running for Congress. We are still in existence. We still give money to pro-life women candidates. As a matter of fact, just this last go-around, people like Martha Roby were maxed out donors to us, Anne Marie Burkle, Kelly Ayotte. We extended it then to the Senate, and we've given a lot of money. So I moved from wish list, started my own with several other individuals, PAC, because I felt like I needed a vehicle that was going to help more of the pro-life females that were beginning to run for Congress. And that's pure and simple.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just, with one follow-up, because I think this is what folks looking at this and listening to the interview will have as a follow-up in their own minds. So I want you to answer what it might be in their minds. The engine that Wish List provided to specifically pro-choice and only exclusively pro-choice women did help exacerbate the problem, which led to the start of the Susan B. Anthony List, which is not a partisan organization, but is a purely pro-life, of course, organization. So the question that I think needs to be answered in the minds of some is how, with your deep pro-life conviction, you were able to set that, I won't say set it aside. I don't know how, I want to understand how you did that and move forward. And I think me aside, others want to understand how you were able to put that aside and move forward. And I know that you went ahead and started the new organization, which we've been very helpful in working with you on. But it's the setting aside of that central issue. There's only one thing at Wish List that is a real determining factor, and that is that you be pro-choice. So, just can you address that specifically?
Sure. And again, I think for me, I didn't look at it as a choice or a pro-choice or pro-life organization. I have been committed for the last 20 some odd years to electing Republican women. Our numbers were abominable. We had about 10% Republican. I think at one point it had gone up to 13% Republican women in the U.S. House of Representatives. Democrats had about 30 to 40% in the U.S. House of Representatives. And my goal, again, was...
We knew them well, honestly. I mean, I was there at the same time on the other side of Barbara Boxer, Nancy Pelosi, Nita, all the crowd. I understand.
Exactly. And there is, I mean, I wish I could simplify it more, but I... rightfully, wrongfully, I looked at it from purely a standpoint of electing women, and upon realizing, and again, remember, times were a little bit different than many of the women, both Republican and Democrat, that ran were pro-choice. So that was not a good thing either. What we were able to do is, I think, over the years, get more conservative Republican women, pro-life women, to run than ever before. And I realized we needed to provide a mechanism for them, and left Wish List to do that very thing, to provide the mechanism for women to run as pro-life candidates, but also to go out and recruit more of those women that had not done so. I'm happy to say that we had historic elections this past time for women. We elected a historic number of Republican women, pro-life Republican women from all across the country.
I couldn't agree with you more on the success and how exciting that is to see. And we've, you know, the one part of the story here that is that it's been a huge success for a particular brand of woman running, which is a pro-life conservative woman.
It's an evolution, and I think people have to understand that. And I guess if you've been around as long as I have, I mean, things have evolved. Things, you yourself said you've changed. Things have evolved. Things have changed. And I think, again, if you look at what we have done over the years in electing pro-life speakers, and I'm happy to say we've just elected another one, and heck, it's better than Nancy Pelosi any day. I'm sad that we're not able to elect a Republican pro-life leader in the Senate, but I'm hopeful that next go around, and I think that our goal should be set on 2012, where the real change will be, and that's at the White House, electing a conservative pro-life president who can appoint judges that will be helpful in our cause.
Well, I'll put an exclamation point on that. And with that, I'm going to move over to Frank on marriage.
Thank you, Mary.
You still awake, Frank?
I've coffee. It's my one way of doing this. No, Maria, everybody in D.C. who knows you really extols your great ability as an operational person and your ability to move forward.
They don't tell me that, but thank you. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
they tell everybody
That's
that.
the way
And
DC is, right?
No, they tell everybody that, and I think that is a great strength. I think one of the other aspects in my own mind of a chairman is representing the brand of Republican, the brand Republican. And as you know, about 80% or more of Republicans believe in traditional marriage. It's been kind of the issue that's had the most extensive testing nationally in various states. There have been 31 states that voted on it. All 31 have voted for traditional marriage. The total numbers of voters have been 63-37 in favor of marriage among those states. Yet we've had RNC chairman, a brilliant guy, Ken Melman, a man I really respect, who's made the recommendation, and there are others within the DC community, making a recommendation that we no longer associate traditional marriage with the Republican brand. The chairman, I believe, has a central role in defining what it means to be, what the Republican brand means. What would you do as chairman? And would you follow the recommendation of some who say this shouldn't be central to what we do in terms of branding the Republican Party? Or would you see it as part of your job to make an argument for traditional marriage?
Well, let me start, Frank, by I probably understand more than most. I was a pollster. I started out as a pollster in the mid-'80s. So I have been looking at data for many, many years. Some say that that's a little crazy, that I actually still like to look at crosstabs. So I have continued to do that. So what you speak is exactly the truth. You know, as chairman, I think it's very, very important. I believe that a marriage is extremely important between a man and a woman. And I believe in a traditional marriage. And I'll go back to my faith and family. My faith, devout Catholic. I belong probably to one of the most arguably conservative churches in the Arlington diocese. I like to say probably in the country. And that is central to the Catholic Church. In addition to my family, I not only grew up with a mother and a father, but I also had a grandmother and a grandfather that lived with me all of my adult life until they passed away. So I have been blessed with a very, very traditional extended family. So I understand the importance of that. And as a chairman, you know, these are the tenets of our platform. And it becomes extremely important that motivates our base, motivates our voters. It's the social conservatives that come out and vote for us that help us elect a Republican, conservative, pro-life president, a speaker, and hope soon to be a leader of the U.S. Senate. And I believe that that is something that we must continue to do because those are the voters, the very voters, that enthusiasm, that energy is what we are all about. So I don't know how one goes without the other.
Okay. As an ethnic Italian, I'm half Irish, half Italian. So as an ethnic, I
Cannon, wait a second. Where's the vowel?
No, Pasqualina Concetta Chiafari. That's
see, okay.
half and half. So, but both sides represent the kind of ethnic family, and I think represent actually a very strong potential for the Republican Party to reach out to them. I picture the chairman of the party being on the television in a talk show talking to the Pasqualina Concetta Chiafaris of the world. How would you defend marriage against kind of the more elite, more common DC notion that it really should represent a choice of the individual regardless of the sexual orientation of the two people involved? How would you defend traditional marriage to Pasqualina Concetta Chiafari, who is a very strong potential Republican voter, but sometimes has voted Democrat? How do you get her aboard by defending marriage? How would you do that?
Well, the Chevettas, Cinos, and the Trippies as Italians started out as conservative Democrats. So we've had to do a little bit of educating. And I think that, again, if you go back to what you stated, listen, these are strong roots in our society, traditional family marriage. And I believe that, again, when looking at the Republican Party, looking at our voters, looking at how far we have come, and I'll go back to 93 when nobody believed that we could be a majority. The reason we got there was because of our strong traditional values in marriage, in life, national defense, spending, taxes. Those are the traditions, and I think family stands out there as one of the biggest. We go in households, and it's the traditional family that vote Republican, and we have to work, and will continue to work with our voters to make sure that they know where we stand and continue to educate, continue to grow our coalitions. That's how we become a majority. That's how we elect a pro-life speaker. That's how we will elect a pro-life leader in the Senate. And that's how we will elect a pro-life, traditional family value president.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more that the putting together of coalitions is at the heart of this. And I think your approach to that is exactly right. You've explained, I think, beautifully why those elements are necessary to win. I'm asking you to make the argument that exists in your own mind for marriage itself that doesn't go to the purely operational, that doesn't go to the...
You're asking an operations person's that.
No, that I picture you having to be in a place where as chairman you would be sitting there saying, here's why we as Republicans believe in marriage, and that you can't simply say because it works in combination with other things to allow us to win. I think it's very clear to the people on who are going to be seeing this that you're 100% right about why it's in Republicans' interest to do this. My question is, give us a picture of how you would operate as chairman to make this case to the people who aren't committed to the Republican victory, but might be committed to marriage and see you as a spokesman because it's part of the brand for the idea of marriage. How would you approach that?
Again, I think by reiterating the fact that I believe of the importance and the necessity of traditional marriage between a man and a woman for procreation, creating families. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's been not only something that has been important, but would again be important, and we need to keep reiterating in our platform. So I wouldn't run away from it. And I think that again, my family, I am single and I have not been blessed with children, but I also believe that I love and adore all of my godchildren and all of the many, many friends of mine whose children call me Aunt Maria, that I get to spoil rotten. So a strong traditional family is extremely important, the upbringing of our children, and quite frankly, the next generation.
Great. Let me just end with one quick kind of like yes/no question.
Uh-oh.
No. This I think will be easy in the context of everything you said. I mean, as you know, there's a federalization of this question of marriage because of the attack on Prop 8 in the courts, and that there is some chance that the will of the voters in California might be overturned by a federal court asserting a federal right here. And the platform calls for the enacting of a federal marriage amendment, particularly if in the case of a court action, the state defense of marriage no longer becomes viable because there's a federal interest established by the court to have a gay marriage or non-traditional marriage. Would you use the resources of the RNC to support a constitutional amendment were the courts to reject traditional marriage?
Absolutely. I think we've done in the past. We would do it again. I also think that it's important to look at the states. I'm not sure if it's 2731. I apologize, but I know I've helped several of our attorney general candidates in Florida, Virginia, and I think that that's something we need to continue to do too. And you're right, Frank. I'm probably not as deep on some of the issues. I'm more of an operations person. But we need to look at some of those state and local elections that are going to be extremely important. While the federal election is extremely important, we also need to look at what's going on the state level. And we need to help some of our state office holders, educating them and making sure that they have the resources.
Well, thank you very much. I think you've given us a greater picture of who you are, and as an Italian, I commend you for running for office.